The HFY Dominion had watched humanity for a very long time, and they did not like what they saw. For 50 years, their spy ships had hidden in the darkness between stars, recording everything about the strange soft creatures who called themselves human. The Dominion Council studied the reports with growing concern. These humans spread across the galaxy like water spilling across a floor. They built colonies on frozen worlds and burning deserts. They carved homes into asteroids and planted flags on moons. Nothing seemed to stop them. "They are weak," Fleet Commander Vorath told the Council during a war meeting. "Their bodies break easily. They have no claws, no armor, no venom. A single HFY warrior could kill 10 of them in close combat." The Council members clicked their mandibles in agreement. Vorath was their finest military mind, a commander who had conquered 12 species and never lost a battle. If he said the humans were weak, then they must be weak. "But they have numbers," one council member warned. "They have spread to over 200 worlds. Their population grows every year. Then we must cull them before they grow too strong," Vorath replied. "We will start with a small colony, one far from their core worlds. We will test their response and learn their weaknesses. Then we will strike at their heart." The council approved his plan, and Vorath began searching for the perfect target. He needed a colony that was isolated and undefended. He needed a world that would fall quickly and send a message to the rest of humanity. After weeks of searching, he found exactly what he wanted. Arcadia 7. The planet sat at the outer edge of human space, far from any military bases or patrol routes. It was a farming world, covered in endless fields of golden grain that fed dozens of other colonies. The population was small, only 12,000 humans. Most of them were farmers, teachers, and children. There were no soldiers. There were no weapons platforms in orbit. There were no defense shields protecting the cities. It was perfect. Vorath brought 3 warships to Arcadia 7 on a quiet morning when the sun was just rising over the wheat fields. His ships darkened the sky like storm clouds, and the colonists looked up in confusion and fear. They had never seen alien vessels before. They had never imagined that war would come to their peaceful world. The governor of Arcadia 7 was a kind old woman named Sarah Chun. She had moved to the colony 40 years ago to escape the noise and rush of Earth. She had wanted a simple life, a quiet life, a life of growing things and watching children play. Now she stood in her office and watched alien soldiers march through her streets. "This is Fleet Commander Vorath of the HFY Dominion," a harsh voice announced through every speaker in the colony. "Your world now belongs to us. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated fairly. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Governor Chun looked at her advisors with tired eyes. What choice did they have? They had no weapons. They had no army. They had farming equipment and school buses and medical supplies. They could not fight a fleet of warships. They could not fight a fleet of warships. "Tell the people to stay calm," she said softly. "Tell them to cooperate. We will survive this. Help will come." The colonists surrendered within 3 hours. The HFY soldiers rounded them up and marched them to holding camps outside the main city. Families huddled together on cold concrete floors. Children cried for their parents. Old people sat in silence and stared at nothing. Vorath walked through the camps with satisfaction glowing in his 4 eyes. This was easier than he had expected. The humans had not even tried to fight. They had simply given up and accepted their fate. Perhaps the Dominion had been worried about nothing. Perhaps humans really were just soft little creatures waiting to be conquered. "Send a message to the Council," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them Arcadia 7 has fallen. Tell them humanity is weak. Tell them the galaxy has been afraid of shadows." His officer obeyed, and within hours the entire Dominion was celebrating their easy victory. Vorath was praised as a genius. Plans were made to attack more human colonies. The conquest of humanity had begun. But Vorath noticed something strange as he walked through the prisoner camps. The humans were not behaving the way conquered people should behave. They were not weeping or begging for mercy. They were not fighting among themselves for food or blankets. They were quiet. They were calm. They watched him with steady eyes that held no fear. It made him uncomfortable in ways he could not explain. On the third day of the occupation, Vorath stopped in front of an old human male. The man had white hair and wrinkled skin and hands that were rough from decades of farm work. He sat on the ground with chains around his wrists, but he looked up at Vorath and smiled. That smile bothered Vorath more than anything. "You seem calm for a prisoner," Vorath said. "I have lived a long life," the old farmer replied. "I have seen many things. I know that nothing lasts forever, not even conquest." "Your colony will belong to the Dominion forever," Vorath sneered. "Your people will serve us until they die." The farmer's smile grew wider. "You picked us," he said softly. "Of all the human colonies in the galaxy, you picked us. Do you know what kind of colony Arcadia 7 is, Commander?" Vorath felt a strange chill run down his spine, but he kept his voice steady. "You are a farming world. You grow food. You are weak and defenseless. We are what humans call a breadbasket colony," the farmer explained. "We grow food, yes. But do you know who we grow it for? We feed soldiers. We raise the children of soldiers while their parents go to war. Half the people in this camp have family members who serve in the military." Vorath stared at him in silence. "You did not capture a random colony, Commander," the farmer continued. "You captured the families of warriors. You put chains on the children of killers. Do you know what soldiers do when someone hurts their families?" "What?" Vorath asked, and his voice was barely a whisper. The old farmer leaned forward until his face was close to Vorath's. His eyes were hard and cold and filled with something that looked almost like pity. "They come home," he said, "and they bring their anger with them. You have made a terrible mistake, Commander. You have poked a sleeping giant and filled him with rage. Enjoy your victory while it lasts, because it will not last long." Vorath stepped back from the prisoner. He wanted to laugh at the old man's words. He wanted to dismiss them as the desperate rambling of a defeated enemy. But something in those calm human eyes told him the farmer was not lying. For the first time since arriving on Arcadia 7, Fleet Commander Vorath felt afraid. The distress signal traveled through space at the speed of light, bouncing from relay station to relay station across the darkness between stars. It was a simple message, just a few lines of text and a set of coordinates, but it carried the weight of 12,000 lives. "Arcadia 7 under attack. Alien forces have invaded. We are surrendering to protect civilians. Please send help. Please send help. Please send help." The signal reached the Terran Colonial Authority on Earth 14 hours after Governor Chun sent it. Admirals and politicians gathered in emergency meetings to discuss what to do. They talked about diplomacy and negotiations and the proper channels for responding to alien aggression. They debated and argued and formed committees to study the problem. But the signal also reached another destination, and the response there was very different. 16 hours after the fall of Arcadia 7, the distress call arrived at the New Sparta Military Academy. New Sparta was not like other human colonies. It was not a farming world or a mining station or a trading hub. New Sparta was a fortress, a weapon, a clenched fist made of steel and stone. It had been built inside the hollow shell of a dead moon, carved from rock and metal by engineers who wanted to create something indestructible. The colony existed for one purpose and one purpose only: to train soldiers. Humanity had learned hard lessons in its long history. They had learned that peace was precious but fragile. They had learned that kindness could be mistaken for weakness. They had learned that the galaxy was vast and dark and full of creatures who would take everything you loved if you could not stop them. So they built New Sparta. The academy trained 50,000 soldiers at any given time. They came from all across human space, young men and women who wanted to protect their homes and families. They learned to fight with guns and knives and their bare hands. They learned to pilot fighters and command battleships and lead armies. They trained until their bodies were hard as iron and their minds were sharp as blades. And when they graduated, they became the most dangerous warriors humanity had ever produced. Academy Commandant Helena Voss was teaching a class when the distress signal arrived. She stood at the front of a large room filled with senior officers, explaining the principles of siege warfare with the calm confidence of someone who had fought in a dozen real sieges. Her personal communicator buzzed. She glanced at it and saw the emergency code, and her voice stopped in the middle of a sentence. She read the message once, twice, 3 times. Her face went pale, then red, then settled into something hard and cold. "Class is cancelled," she said. Her voice was flat and quiet, but every officer in the room felt a chill run through them. "Report to your stations. We are going to war." The students did not ask questions. They stood up and ran. Helena Voss was 63 years old, but she moved like a woman half her age as she marched toward the command center. Her silver hair was pulled back tight against her skull. Her face was lined with scars and wrinkles from decades of combat. Her eyes burned with a fire that made everyone step aside as she passed. She had a daughter on Arcadia 7. Her little girl, just 7 years old, had been sent to live with her grandmother while Helena served her final tour as Academy Commandant. The child loved the open fields and the golden wheat and the peaceful quiet of the farming world. She sent her mother video messages every week, talking about her friends and her school and the baby animals on the neighbor's farm. Now the child was in chains, held prisoner by alien invaders who had dared to touch what belonged to Helena Voss. The commandant reached the command center and found it already buzzing with activity. Officers ran between stations, pulling up star charts and fleet positions and intelligence reports. Everyone moved with desperate speed, but there was no panic. These were Spartans. They had trained their whole lives for moments like this. "Status report," Helena demanded. "3 alien warships in orbit around Arcadia 7, her tactical officer replied. "Unknown configuration, but our analysts estimate they are roughly equal to our heavy cruisers. Ground forces have occupied the main colony and established prisoner camps. Approximately 12,000 civilians in captivity. Fleet readiness? 3rd Fleet can launch within 6 hours. 47 warships, 12 carriers, 200 fighters. We also have 10,000 ground troops ready for immediate deployment." Helena nodded. "It would be enough. It would be more than enough. Send the call," she ordered. "Every active soldier, every reservist, every veteran who can still hold a rifle. Tell them what happened. Tell them Arcadia has fallen. Tell them our families are in chains." The message went out across New Sparta like wildfire. It reached barracks and training grounds and private homes. It reached old soldiers who had retired to quiet lives and young recruits who had never seen combat. It reached mothers and fathers and children who had grown up hearing stories about the peaceful farming world where their relatives lived. And everywhere the message went, people stopped what they were doing and began to prepare for war. There was no debate. There was no discussion. There was no need for orders or commands. Every Spartan knew what had to be done. Their families were in danger. Their brothers and sisters and parents and children were being held by alien monsters. Nothing else mattered. Nothing else existed. Within hours, the Third Fleet was ready to launch. Ships that had been sitting in dry dock for maintenance were rushed back into service. Fighters that had been scheduled for upgrades were loaded with weapons and fuel. Soldiers who had been on leave came running back to base, still pulling on their armor as they boarded transport ships. Helena Voss stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Fury of the Forgotten and watched her fleet assemble. The old ship hummed with power around her, its ancient engines warming up for one more battle. The Fury had fought in humanity's first interstellar war 200 years ago. It had been rebuilt and upgraded a dozen times. Its hull was covered with the names of every battle it had survived, carved into the metal by the crews who had served aboard. Now it would carry Helena to Arcadia 7, and it would help her get her daughter back. "All ships report ready, Commandant," her flag captain announced. "We can jump on your order." Helena looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 12,000 innocent people were waiting for rescue. Somewhere out there, her little girl was scared and alone and wondering if her mother would come for her. "The Vethkai think they have won," Helena said quietly. "They think they have conquered our weakest colony and proven that humanity is easy prey. They have no idea what they have done. They have no idea what is coming for them." She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. "All ships, engage hyperdrives. We jump in 60 seconds. Destination, Arcadia 7. The fleet lit up like a constellation of angry stars, and then they vanished into the darkness between worlds. They were coming, and they were bringing hell with them. Fleet Commander Vorath had grown comfortable on Arcadia 7. 5 days had passed since the conquest, and everything was running smoothly. The human prisoners were obedient and quiet. The resources of the planet were flowing steadily back to the Dominion. His soldiers had settled into a pleasant routine of guard duty and rest. There had been no resistance, no escape attempts, no trouble of any kind. Vorath spent his evenings in the former governor's mansion, drinking fine wine that the humans had been foolish enough to leave behind. He wrote reports to the council about his brilliant victory. He made plans for the next colony to fall. Perhaps he would attack a mining world next, or maybe a trading station. The humans had so many colonies to choose from. "This is almost too easy," he told his second-in-command one evening. "I expected at least some resistance. These humans are even weaker than I thought." "The prisoner you spoke with worried me," his officer replied. "His words about soldiers coming home. Do you think there is any truth to them?" Vorath laughed and waved his clawed hand dismissively. "Empty threats from a defeated old man. Even if the humans send a military response, it will take them weeks to organize. Their government moves slowly. They will form committees and have debates and argue about the proper course of action. By the time they decide to do anything, we will have reinforcements in place." He poured himself another glass of wine and smiled at the ceiling. "We have nothing to fear." On the bridge of his flagship, a young censor officer was bored. His name was Keth, and he had joined the Dominion military to see the galaxy and have adventures. Instead, he was staring at an empty screen in orbit around a quiet farming world. Nothing ever happened here. The humans did not even have any ships to watch. Keth yawned and stretched his forearms. Maybe he would ask for a transfer after this mission. Maybe he would request a posting somewhere more exciting, somewhere with actual enemies to fight. His sensor board suddenly lit up with warnings. Keth leaned forward and stared at the screen. He must be seeing things. The equipment must be broken. There was no way the readings could be real. "Computer, confirm sensor data," he said, his voice shaking. "Sensor data confirmed," the computer replied. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Enemy fleet emerging from jump." "How many ships?" Keth asked, and his throat was so dry he could barely speak. 47 capital ships. 12 carrier vessels, 200 fighter craft. Additional contacts still emerging. Keth screamed. The sound echoed through the ship, bringing officers running from every direction. Commander Vorath rushed onto the bridge with wine still staining his uniform, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Report." "Contact." Keth shouted, pointing at the view screen. "F. Tell signatures." "Commander, there are ships everywhere. I cannot count them all. There are so many." Vorath looked at the main display, and his blood turned to ice. The sky above Arcadia 7 was filling with human warships. They poured out of hyperspace like a river of steel and fire, their engines blazing and their weapons already powering up. Fighters launched from carrier bays in swarms. Destroyers and cruisers took formation around massive battleships. And at the center of it all, leading the charge like an ancient god of war, came a dreadnought so large it blocked out the stars. The fury of the Forgotten had arrived. "This is impossible," Vorath whispered. "They could not have responded so quickly. They could not have assembled a fleet so fast." But the evidence was right in front of his eyes. The humans had come, and they had come in force. "Open a channel," Vorath ordered, his voice cracking with desperation. "I need to speak with their commander. Now." The communication officer worked frantically at his station. "Channel open, Commander." Vorath straightened his uniform and tried to look commanding. He was a fleet commander of the Vethkai Dominion. He had conquered 12 species. He would not show fear to these soft human creatures. "Attention, human vessels," he announced. "This system is under Vethkai control. You are committing an act of war against the Dominion. I order you to withdraw immediately or face destruction." The main view screen flickered and a human face appeared. It was a woman, old by human standards, with silver hair and cold gray eyes. Her face was carved from stone, and her voice was carved from ice. "I am Commandant Helena Voss of the New Sparta Military Academy," she said. "And you are the creature who took my daughter." Vorath felt his legs go weak. "Your daughter?" "She is 7 years old. She has brown hair and green eyes and a smile that lights up every room. She was living with her grandmother on Arcadia 7, far from war and violence, safe and happy and innocent. And you put her in chains." Helena leaned forward until her face filled the screen. Her eyes burned with a fury that made Vorath want to run and hide. "I am not here for diplomacy, Commander. I am not here for negotiation. I am here for my child and for every other prisoner you are holding. If you attack us, the Dominion will respond with overwhelming force." Vorath threatened. "You will start a war you cannot win. You started this war when you touched our families." Helena replied, "Now you will learn what happens when you anger humanity." She held up one hand and began counting on her fingers. "You have 6 hours to release every prisoner, unharmed and uninjured. You will load them onto our transport ships and return them to safety. You will then withdraw your forces from this system and never return." "And if we refuse?" Vorath asked, though he already knew the answer. Helena smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Vorath had ever seen. "If you refuse, we will crack open your ships like eggs. We will hunt down every soldier you have on the ground. We will tear this occupation apart piece by piece until nothing remains but ash and memory. And then we will follow you home and burn your worlds the way you tried to burn ours." The transmission ended. Vorath stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers who looked at him with fear and confusion. He looked at the enemy fleet on his sensors. 47 warships against his 3. 200 fighters against his 20. And that massive dreadnought, ancient and scarred and hungry for blood. He had 6 hours to make a decision. "What are your orders, Commander?" His second-in-command asked quietly. Vorath clenched his fists and forced himself to think. He could not surrender. The Dominion did not surrender. He would be executed for cowardice if he gave up without a fight. But he could not win. The math was simple and brutal. Even if his ships were twice as powerful as the human vessels, he was outnumbered 15-1. This was not a battle. This was an execution. "Prepare for combat," he said finally. "We will fight. We will show these humans that the Dominion does not bow to threats." His officers obeyed, but their movements were slow and their faces were pale. They all knew they were going to die. The 6 hours passed in terrible silence. Vorath used every minute to prepare his defenses. He positioned his 3 warships in a tight formation, their shields overlapping for maximum protection. He ordered his fighters to launch and form a screen around the capital ships. He told his ground forces to dig in around the prisoner camps and prepare for assault. But even as he gave commands, he knew it was hopeless. He was arranging chairs on a sinking ship. He was building walls of sand against an incoming ocean. When the deadline expired, Commandant Helena Voss did not bother with another warning. She simply gave one quiet order. "All ships, engage." The Third Fleet of New Sparta surged forward like a tidal wave of destruction. Human fighters screamed through space, their weapons blazing with deadly light. They moved with a precision that seemed almost beautiful, weaving between enemy fire and striking with perfect accuracy. Each pilot flew like they were possessed by demons, pushing their machines beyond every limit. They had family down there. They had brothers and sisters and parents and children waiting in those camps. Every second of delay was another second their loved ones spent in chains. Vorath's fighter screen lasted less than 2 minutes. The human pilots cut through them like a hot knife through soft butter. One by one, the Vethkai fighters exploded into balls of fire, their pilots never even seeing the shots that killed them. "Concentrate fire on their lead ships." Vorath screamed. "Target their weapons. Disable their engines." His gunners obeyed, pouring energy into the advancing human fleet. But the Spartans had trained for this moment their entire lives. They knew how to fight, how to dodge, how to absorb damage and keep coming. Their ships were scarred and battered, but they never slowed down. The fury of the Forgotten led the charge, its ancient hull glowing with absorbed energy. The dreadnought was older than most of the crew members aboard it. It had fought in wars that had ended before their grandparents were born. Its armor was thick and its weapons were powerful, upgraded 100 times over 2 centuries of service. Helena Voss stood on the bridge and watched the enemy ships grow larger in the view screen. Her face showed no emotion. Her hands did not shake. She had been doing this for 40 years. She had fought pirates and rebels and alien raiders across a dozen systems. This battle was just one more entry in a long list of victories. "Target their flagship," she ordered. "I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. I need the commander alive." "Yes, Commandant." The Fury's main guns roared to life, sending beams of concentrated energy slamming into Vorath's warship. The enemy shields flickered and failed. Hull plating melted and tore away. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as power systems overloaded. Vorath was thrown to the deck as his ship shuddered and groaned. Alarms screamed from every direction. Officers shouted damage reports that grew worse by the second. Shields down. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Weapon systems offline. Engines failing. The battle lasted 11 minutes from first shot to final surrender. The other 2 Vethkai warships tried to flee when they saw their flagship fall. They turned their engines to maximum and ran for the edge of the system. But the Spartans were faster. Human cruisers caught them before they could escape, pounding them with missiles and energy weapons until they were nothing but expanding clouds of debris. There were no survivors. On the ground, The Spartan Marines landed like falling stars. Transport ships screamed through the atmosphere, trailing fire and smoke as they descended toward the prisoner camps. Doors flew open while the ships were still moving, and soldiers leaped out with weapons ready. Helena Voss was on the first transport down. She hit the ground running, her rifle already firing at the Vethkai guards who tried to stop her. She was 63 years old, but she moved like a woman of 20, driven by fury and love and the desperate need to find her child. The alien soldiers had no chance. They had been occupation troops, used to guarding unarmed prisoners and living in comfort. They had never faced real warriors. They had never fought enemies who truly wanted them dead. The Spartans wanted them dead. Every Marine had family in those camps. Every soldier had someone they loved being held behind those fences. They fought with a savage intensity that the Vethkai had never seen before. They showed no mercy. They asked for no surrender. They simply killed everything that stood between them and their families. Helena carved a path through the enemy lines, her rifle cutting down guards like stalks of wheat. She reached the main prisoner camp and blasted open the gates. And there, standing in a crowd of frightened colonists, she saw her daughter. The little girl had a bruise on her cheek where a guard had hit her. Her clothes were dirty and her hair was tangled, and her eyes were red from crying. But when she saw her mother, her face lit up with pure joy. "Mama!" Helena dropped her rifle and ran to her daughter. She scooped the child up in her arms and held her tight, tears streaming down her face. For one perfect moment, the war did not exist. For one precious heartbeat, there was nothing in the universe except a mother and her child. Then Helena kissed her daughter on the forehead and handed her to a waiting medic. "Take her to the ship," she said. "Keep her safe." She picked up her rifle and walked back toward the fighting. There was still work to be done. By the time the sun set over Arcadia 7, the occupation was over. Every Vethkai soldier on the ground was dead or captured. Every prisoner had been freed and was receiving medical care. The alien ships in orbit were either destroyed or disabled, their crews being processed as prisoners of war. Helena had Vorath brought before her in the ruins of his command center. The alien commander was bound and beaten, his once proud uniform torn and stained. He looked up at her with fear in his 4 eyes. "You will pay for this," he said, but his voice was weak and trembling. "The Dominion will send 1,000 ships to avenge this defeat." Helena crouched down until she was at eye level with him. Her face was still as stone, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "You thought we were weak because we farm," she said softly. "You thought we were prey because we raise children instead of armies. You were wrong. We do those things because we are strong. We do those things because we have won enough wars to know what really matters. But we never forget how to fight." She grabbed his chin and forced him to look at her. "And we never forgive those who hurt our families." She stood up and gestured to her guards. "Put him on a shuttle and send him home," she ordered. "I want him to deliver a message to his masters. I want him to tell them exactly what happened here. And I want him to warn them what will happen if they ever touch one of our colonies again." Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Tell them we showed mercy today. Tell them we let survivors escape. But tell them this: if they come back, there will be no mercy. We will burn a path to their homeworld and salt the ashes." Vorath was dragged away, and Helena turned to look at the sunset. Somewhere behind her, colonists were celebrating their freedom. Somewhere behind her, families were reuniting after days of terror. Somewhere behind her, her daughter was safe and warm and waiting for her. The battle was over, but Helena knew that the war was just beginning. The shuttle carrying Vorath arrived at the Vethkai homeworld 7 days after the battle. He had spent those 7 days alone in a small cabin, staring at the walls and replaying the disaster in his mind. He could not stop seeing the human fleet emerging from hyperspace. He could not stop hearing the commandant's cold voice promising destruction. He could not stop feeling the terror that had gripped him as his ship was torn apart. He had been the Dominion's greatest commander. He had conquered 12 species. He had never known defeat. Now he was a broken creature, carrying a message of warning to leaders who would probably execute him for failure. The council chamber was dark and cold when Vorath entered. The 7 members of the Dominion Council sat on elevated thrones, looking down at him with their glowing eyes. They had already received reports about what happened at Arcadia 7. They already knew about the destroyed fleet and the dead soldiers. But they wanted to hear the story from Vorath himself. "Speak," the High Chancellor commanded. "Tell us everything." Vorath told them. He told them about the conquest, how easy it had been, how the humans had surrendered without a fight. He told them about his confidence, his pride, his certainty that humanity was weak. He told them about the old farmer's warning, which he had ignored. Then he told them about the fleet. "They came from nowhere," he said, his voice shaking. "We had no warning." One moment the sky was empty, and the next moment it was filled with warships. They had assembled an entire battle fleet in less than 3 days. They had traveled across half the galaxy at speeds we thought impossible. The council members shifted uncomfortably on their thrones. "How many ships?" the High Chancellor asked. 47 capital ships, 12 carriers, 200 fighters, and a dreadnought that was older than our civilization, covered in the names of all the battles it had survived. Vorath pulled out a data chip and held it up with trembling claws. "The human commander recorded a message for you. She wanted you to see it. She wanted you to understand." The chamber's main screen flickered to life, and Commandant Helena Voss appeared. She looked directly into the camera with eyes that seemed to burn through the display. Behind her, the ruins of the Vethkai Command Center were visible, along with human soldiers standing guard over captured aliens. "I am Commandant Helena Voss of New Sparta," she began. "I am speaking to the leaders of the Vethkai Dominion. You need to hear what I have to say." She paused and took a breath. "You attacked Arcadia 7 because you thought it would be easy. You saw a farming world with no military and no weapons, and you thought you had found weakness. You were wrong." She stepped closer to the camera. "Arcadia 7 is one of over 200 human colonies. It is small and peaceful and far from our core worlds. It is what we call a breadbasket colony, a place where we grow food and raise children. It has no army because it does not need one." Her voice grew harder. "It does not need an army because it has a sister. New Sparta is Arcadia's sister colony. We were founded by the same generation ship, settled by the same families. For 2 centuries, we have protected each other. Spartan soldiers retire to Arcadian farms. Arcadian children train at Spartan academies. We are bound together by blood and history and love." She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "When you attacked Arcadia, you attacked the families of 10,000 Spartan warriors. You put chains on our children and parents and siblings. You threatened everything we love." Her smile vanished. "So we came. We did not wait for permission. We did not form committees or hold debates. We simply loaded our ships and came. It took us 3 days to travel across half the galaxy. It took us 11 minutes to destroy your fleet." She let the silence stretch. "You wondered why humanity spread so fast. You wondered why we colonize every rock and moon and asteroid we can find. You wondered how we built an empire so quickly." She leaned forward. "It is because we learned something long ago, back when we were still killing each other on a single blue world. We learned that the family who fights together survives together. Every colony is a sibling. Every outpost is a cousin. Every human is family." Her eyes burned with fierce intensity. You cannot attack one of us without attacking all of us. You cannot hurt one colony without making enemies of every colony. There is no such thing as an isolated human settlement. There is only the human family, spread across the stars, watching over each other. She straightened up and spoke her final words. Arcadia 7 was our weakest colony. It had no weapons, no soldiers, no defenses. And you saw what came for them. You saw the fury of their sister world. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire council chamber. Imagine what would come if you touched Earth. The recording ended. The council sat in stunned silence. The High Chancellor stared at the blank screen with wide eyes. The other members whispered nervously to each other, their mandibles clicking with fear. What do we do? One council member asked. Do we send more ships? Do we seek revenge? With what ships? Another replied. Did you see their fleet? Did you count their fighters? They could crush our entire navy if they wanted to. They showed mercy this time, a third member added. They let Vorath live. They let his crew escape. But the human commander promised that next time would be different. Next time there would be no survivors. The High Chancellor raised one claw for silence. The chamber fell quiet. We will not seek revenge, he announced. We will not attack any more human colonies. We will withdraw our exploration vessels from their space and avoid all contact. Is that wise? One member protested. Will we not look weak? The High Chancellor turned his glowing eyes toward the protester. We will look wise, he said. We will look like leaders who know when to fight and when to retreat. The humans have shown us what they can do. They have proven that attacking them is suicide. Only fools pick fights they cannot win. He waved his claw at a scribe. Add a new entry to the species database. Humans are no longer classified as minor species. They are now classified as a galactic-level threat. Mark their space as restricted. No HFY vessel is to enter human territory without special permission. The council members nodded in agreement. Even the one who had protested kept quiet. The scribe typed a new entry into the database. It would be read by every HFY captain, every military officer, every government official for generations to come. Species, human status. Do not engage THRE level. Maximum anotis. They are never alone. They are never unarmed. And they never forget. The species displays extreme protective behavior toward family members. Attacking one colony will trigger a military response from all colonies. Even their weakest settlements have powerful allies. Avoidance is the only safe strategy. Recommend no contact under any circumstances. In the years that followed, the HFY kept their distance from humanity. They watched from afar as the humans continued to spread across the galaxy, building new colonies and forging new alliances. They saw the human family grow larger and stronger, until it seemed like half the galaxy flew human flags. And sometimes, late at night, the old council members would remember the face of Commandant Helena Voss. They would remember her cold eyes and her deadly smile. They would remember her promise of fire and ash and destruction. They had gone hunting for prey and found a predator. They had captured a lamb and met its furious sister. They never made that mistake again.